Okay, welcome to the League of Women Voters of the Mother Lodes Forum for Sonora City Council. I am Pam Vlatch, and I'm honored to be the president of the League. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Debbie Baptista, who is Tuolumne County's Register of Voters, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and speak to us about voter registration and voting. And she had to run all the way from the back.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were doing this twice. If you all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, I'm Debbie Batista, and I'm your Register of Voters, and I just want to tell you that ballots were mailed on Monday, and some of you have already received your ballots because you've told me so. I have not been home today, so I don't know if I have mine or not. So here's some really important dates to keep in mind that if you are not registered to vote, or you have changed your name, or you have moved within Tuolumne County, you want to re-register to vote, and that deadline is May 23rd if you want to do it via either the Secretary of State's webpage, www.sos.ca.gov, or filling out a registration cards. There's ladies outside who will help you fill out registration cards tonight. But if you, that doesn't mean you cannot re-register. You can register all the way up to Election Day. You just need to do it in person. So you'll need to go to one of the vote centers, or you'll need to go to my office. So my office is open for voting and has been since Monday. So you can come to my office Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock and vote. You can come to my office and register to vote if you want to. And then starting Memorial Weekend, Tuolumne Hall, and I'm going to do it right this time, and my office, this room, will be open vote centers for that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So you can come and vote from 8:30 to 4:30. And then Tuolumne Hall will be opened from that weekend on all the way up till June 7th. And then the following weekend, and my office is open, and the following weekend, then the other vote centers, Jamestown, which I forgot last time, Jamestown, Twain Harte, Groveland will now be open from 8 o'clock in the morning from 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, and then on the weekend 8:30 to 4:30, and then on Election Day all of us will be open from 7 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. If you want to see the results, you come downstairs after we ring the bell. Randy, are you going to ring the bell for me this year? After you ring the bell, Randy is the best ringer beller that in the entire world. After Randy rings the bell, because I have to stand next to him, after he does that, then we'll push the button and we'll have the first results. And the first results are everybody who got their ballots into us by Tuesday at noon. So get your ballots in as soon as you can, so you'll be part of the first reading of the numbers. If we have really close races, it's nice if we get a lot of ballots in. We usually have about 10% of the ballots come in Election Day, and that usually takes us a couple days to get through all of the ballots. So do your homework, listen to the candidates, read everything that you can, vote intelligently, vote your heart, and but vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baptista. We'd like to thank Ms. Baptista for her assistance with the logistics of setting up this forum, Tuolumne County for the use of these chambers, and to our candidates for participating in the forum. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920. The League of Women Voters of the Mother Lode was founded in 2017. The League is a non-partisan organization. It does not support nor endorse political parties or candidates. This forum is being recorded and can be seen in its entirety on Access Tuolumne and on our website. We retain all rights to this recording, and it must be shown in its entirety. Our moderator this evening is Mrs. Leonidas Russell. Ms. Russell is a resident of District 4, and she has been a member of the League of Women Voters since its inception and is a past president. We have heard indirectly that Mr. Kirk Bryant is unable to attend this evening. So at this point, Mrs. Russell, are you ready? Oh, okay.
Well, I must say there was some doubt about my being a moderator, not because of my speaking ability, but because of my height. So several people were concerned that perhaps I wouldn't be able to see over the podium. So it just goes to show, you can do anything you want as long as you wear 2-inch heels. I'd like to welcome you to the second forum of the evening, that for the City Council. I would like to remind everyone that the candidates have agreed to participate following the guidelines and rules set forth by the League, one of which is to allow each candidate to finish speaking and not interrupt one another. It's kind of like you do at home. Wait until someone's finished speaking before you say anything. As a matter of courtesy, please turn off your cell phones and any other electronic equipment. Please refrain from applause and other expressions of support or opposition to any of the candidates. The speaking order was determined by lot and will rotate. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement, 1 minute to respond to the question, and 2 minutes for closing statement. The closing statement will be in the reverse order of the opening statement. Timekeepers will alert the candidates of the remaining time with 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and a stop. The questions were developed by the League of Women Voters with input from community members following League guidelines. I would now like to introduce the candidates. Ms. Suzanne Cruz, Mr. Darren Duez, and Mr. Andy Merrell. Let me shuffle some papers so I get everything just right. The opening statement will take form in this order. Ms. Cruz drew number 1, she will go first. Mr. Merrell drew number 2, and he will go next. And Mr. Duez drew number 3, so he will go third. So let's begin with the opening statement. Ms. Cruz, you're first.
Thank you. What is a vibrant community? Many of us want to move and live in a vibrant community. I like to think that a pivotal part of that is strong individuals. For me, I have been a police officer for 14 years, gotten my bachelor's degree in public administration, and now am a business consultant. I have encouraged my children to be strong individuals, and they are actually contributing in their communities to make them vibrant. When you ask about local government and what kind of success or failure we want to set our next generation up for, you know that the answer for that is creating strong individuals. I like to think that my experience and my background and my enthusiasm for being your next city councilwoman will all contribute to making Sonora the most vibrant community that it can possibly be. Thank you.
Mr. Merrell, you're next.
Hi, my name's Andy Merrell. I've been a resident of Tuolumne County for over 2 decades. I'm a proud graduate of Sonora Elementary and Sonora High Schools, and I see a lot of very familiar faces from those 2 wonderful institutions here this evening. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us here today. I have 4 main issues that I really want to accomplish as a city council member. I want to tackle fire safety and public education on fire prevention. I want to address our housing and homeless crisis. I'd like to increase our arts and cultural presence and increase public engagement in government. And I'd like to increase our public infrastructure and sustainability. The Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan just got released last week. I've had some time to look at that. I want to accomplish these 4 goals through what I call my triple bottom line plan. Borrowed that from the Sierra Business Council. I will weigh each issue based on whether it's good for the community and our citizens, whether it's good for the economy, and whether it's good for the environment.
Mr. Duez?
Thank you. I'm a 39-year-old husband. I'm a businessman. I've been a fireman. I've been dealing with city council and doing on the social equity committee for a while. There's a lot of problems that this city has, and how to tackle them is we actually have to move forward on new ideas. Some of the same ideas we've been using are not working. We need to go back to the drawing board and include a lot of people in that. I chose to run because I am pretty good at solving problems. I've been doing this quite a long time of infrastructure and budgets and things like that. I think the cultural aspect of what we've lost during the COVID timeframe has put a big, deep divide in us, and I want to lead by example to actually get back to where we can shake hands, be friends, be civil, and have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for the first question. The City of Sonora has a proposed $15 million budget. What areas are you comfortable trimming? What areas do you feel need more funding? Ms. Cruz, you will go first.
Trimming and funding. Sorry, I'm going to use your notepad here.
Go ahead.
All right. Funding, the police take up 41% of our budget, followed by fire and then administration. I'd like to look at those and see where the fat is. I know that the fire department just got a Jaws of Life through a grant program, I think about 2 years ago. Where the fat is, I think it's excessive spending on perhaps things that we, I apologize, I want to back up a little bit. I think that overspending oftentimes when I was in law enforcement is spent on the things that maybe perhaps unions want that they don't necessarily need. As a business consultant, I'm just a lot more fiscally conservative, and I look at wants and I weigh the needs. So I'd like to take a look at that and then trim where that's not necessary. And that completes my answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Merrell, if you will go next.
I think a great way to reduce spending is to increase efficiency. And one way that we could do that is an area already identified by the county level Board of Supervisors. As I mentioned in my opening statements, they just released the Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan. And in that, they listed a bunch of ways to increase the efficiency of our government and municipal buildings through things like weatherization, solar grants, and more sustainable infrastructure that we can include in our public buildings. I think that would be a great way to reduce our spending. In terms of areas that we can improve, I would love to see some more arts funding, maybe through projects or funding projects like a community garden or food banks and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Duez?
So being proactive is probably the most important thing. When we talk about trimming or we talk about funding, we need to know where our money was going and we need to know where it's going to going to. Some of the problems there is we're actually overextended on some of the things we're already there. Our budget next year fiscally is going to be a $15,000 hit. So we're going to have to make that up. The year after that, when CalPERS does their negotiations, we're probably going to be closer to a $50,000 deficit. We need to start being proactive versus reactive. Some of the funding that needs to be done is public service. We definitely need that. We need safety, and we need the social services. I believe we have to have that. That is a very important thing. We can do better, but we have to be proactive.
Thank you. As a follow-up, what areas should always be funded that are now not mandated? And Mr. Merrell, you will go first.
I think an area that should always be funded is fire prevention and public education of fire prevention. I just heard from Darren earlier today that there was a fire, that just broke out, 2 houses over from where you were? I think it's only a matter of time before we stop getting lucky and start having to have some serious prices to pay if we don't continue public education on fire prevention. So I would say that should always be funded. Getting mental health and basic public services to our low-income and unsheltered and homeless communities would be another area I would love to always see funded. And of course, the biggest thing, I was actually at the Committee for Homelessness just in this very room this morning, and one of the big things I got to hear was safety, both in our homeless community and just regardless of your socioeconomic background. I think safety and funding our police force, is obviously a #1 priority for our community.
Mr. Duez?
Could you repeat that question?
Certainly. What areas should always be funded that are not now mandated?
That are not mandated. So some of the things that we have are the Fall Through the Gaps programs. We aren't funding that. We say that we have these problems and we want to do something about them, but then the recidivism rate of homelessness or mental health or drugs, and mental health is funded, but it hasn't been adequately funded for years. We do have a problem with that. Those are some of the programs. Obviously, the ones we have to maintain are public safety, our fire, police, that's stuff that we have to. But the stuff that we don't, we really need the mental health, the Fall Through the Gap programs. We need to get back on track to do something right. Thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
And I would agree with my constituents, always fire, police, and mental health problems. One of the things when I have knocked on doors and talked to local citizens, the homeless issue always comes up. And I know that there's a lot of different groups that work to fight the homelessness problem, that they say it's a drug problem, it's a mental health problem. They said, well, we don't know how the fire started over in Washington Street. We have a good idea about that. But we're reacting, and we could be a lot more proactive in those regards. So that answers your question.
Thank you. All right. The next question. What do you feel is the impact of the 3 cannabis dispensaries on the city of Sonora? Mr. Duez, you will go first.
The 2 are open at this point with the possibility of a third. Now, I don't 100% agree with it, but it was a voter-chosen measure to where they wanted cannabis here. I think holding at 2 is probably the smart decision. We're gonna do a revisit within 3 years to where we can look and see the adverse effects of it. I am not pro-marijuana, I'm not anti-marijuana, I'm logic. The people can speak for themselves on who do and don't choose. But if the data says we have a problem and it is getting to our children, then I would definitely vote to get rid of it. But if that data doesn't, it is a $577,000 a year added line item to our budget, and that you can't ignore. So there's some finite time that we really need to sit down and do the data and have conversations with everybody involved to see what we want to move forward as a community. Thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
Yeah, I have strong opinions about that only because of my law enforcement background. One time I was directing traffic, I nearly got hit and killed by someone who was high on marijuana. It is a gateway drug. I think the 2 dispensaries are quite enough. If anyone's driven by the Bract House, you can see that it's large enough to feed probably recreationally and medicinally 5 counties. Economically, is that a good economic base that we want? And is actually that something that we want to say to our children? Do we think maybe that you're sending a message of tacit approval to our youth? You always have to be thinking about the next generation. So I think we're fine at the 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrell?
I believe the people of not only the city of Sonora, but Tuolumne County have spoken fairly resoundingly on this issue, that whether you're in favor of it from a moral perspective, I'm not here to legislate on that. I'm not going to make moral decisions. I don't feel like that's my job as a city council member. So I'm going to let the people decide for themselves. And I think as a proponent of a free market economy, I saw a line out the door like most weekends at the existing ones. So I think it's a great opportunity to make up for budget deficits by allowing them in here. The last thing I want is to get our kids involved in it. So I think there should be some form of honest education component in public schools to get kids properly informed about the risks. And I could say that about alcohol, any other drug, not just marijuana. Take your pick of substances. But I will certainly let the people of Sonora decide for that. It's not my job to legislate morality.
Thank you. The COVID-19 pandemic brought to surface divisions within our country and within our community. What role can the City Council as a whole and you as a council member play in building city unity? And we will go with Ms. Cruz.
Thank you. Recently, there was an article in the Democrat about Soulsbyville School, and they didn't want to do the masks or the forced. I think it was just the masks, I'm not sure. But they had, as a school board, said, no, we don't want this, and then they were threatened to lose their insurance, and then somebody who was fast-thinking said, hey, let's just get another insurance company. So it is about freedom, and that's the argument right now, is that when does your right to have a mask impinge on my right not to have a mask? It's a good question, and I think the state has put a lot of vice grips on the community and created division in the smaller communities that's been unnecessary.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merrell?
I actually have a lot of experience in building unity among people. As a professional musician, I kind of make my living off that, is bringing people together in the name of fun and harmony. In terms of realistic things that the city of Sonora can do, I really love some of the grassroots efforts that I myself have been fortunate to take a part in. Things like Love Tuolumne County. I was over at the Heaven for Kids playground, with my mom, who's here today. Putting a fresh coat of stain on the playground. Things like One Pile at a Time. Fire-wise, in terms of fire prevention, these are things that really put the emphasis on individual members of our community to operate outside of government and also cooperate with it at the same time to find a common goal. So I think the best way to build that sense of unity is to give people something to rally around, things like our local farmers markets, things like our second Saturday art nights. That, to me, has been the biggest community builder that I've experienced in my time as a resident of the city of Sonora.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
COVID-19 definitely divided us. We have to lead from the front. We have to be out meeting people, shaking hands. I've made time. Sorry, fire. I've made time to make myself available for conversations with people I would never guess, and we actually have very common goals. I make myself available for meetings, and we have to show and lead as an example that we can heal the divides. We need more community outreach. We need more events. I would love to do some more events around food. Nobody hates food. So I would love to do something like that to where we can shake hands again and be friendly and say hello in the stores and just be a community. It'd be real nice just to say, hi, how are you? I'm Darren Duez, who are you? Who do you like? Nobody has a problem really talking. It's when politics get involved, COVID gets involved. We got to get away from that. We got to have civil discourse where we can get back to being friends. Thank you.
Thank you. The Ad Hoc Social Equity Committee has been disbanded. What is the responsibility of the City Council regarding their work? Ms. Cruz, you will go first.
The Reverend Martin Luther King said, I look forward to a day when my children will be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. This country seems to have backslid into judging people by the color of their skin, and that's not the message that we want to send to our young. I know that there's the great charters of liberty known as the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. They all work together. The Founding Fathers wrote these beautifully. They ensure our rights. They don't need to be rewritten. And then finally, I would like to bring government back to its proper role, which is just pay the bills, look at overregulation, taxation, and ordinances. That's the government's proper role.
Thank you. Mr. Merrell?
And the question was, what role does the City Council play in social equity issues?
Would you like me to repeat the
Yes,
question?
please.
The Ad Hoc Social Equity Committee has been disbanded. What is the responsibility of the City Council regarding their work?
I look at the Code of Ethics that was adopted probably back in 2002, going on 2 decades ago, in terms of treating every citizen of the city of Sonora with dignity and respect. To me, that's ultimately what social equity really comes down to, is meeting people on their level and finding ways to communicate with them that doesn't ostracize anyone, doesn't see anyone as better or worse than anyone. So I think it's very much ingrained in my role as a city council member to treat people with that dignity and respect. Simple as that.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
I was a member of the Social Equity Committee, so I could speak for this. The city's responsibility is to hold that resolution and abide by it. As the committee went and thought about what we wanted to implement, and it's really, if you drum it up, it's best practices. The hiring processes, how we do everything that we do in the city has to be under a lens. And we need to know that we do it efficiently, we need to do it morally, and we need to do it right. So implementation of that resolution, now that it's disbanded, and I believe it is going to move to a county or more grassroots availability, I think that our responsibility is to continue to go to these meetings, pay attention, understand. You know, that's the thing we lose a lot of, is just trying to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost my spot here for a minute. What do you see as the three most important issues facing Sonora in the next 4 years? And Mr. Merrell, you will go first.
Well, I believe my platform kind of made it easy for me, in no particular order. Well, I would say fire safety would probably be the biggest existential crisis facing us. As I said, I think we only have so many lucky, close calls before we get the big one, and we're not a city anymore. Second would be the housing crisis and getting people affordable housing so they could build lives and careers here. And I guess third would be finding transitional housing and increasing our public outreach support, public health services to our homelessness or our homeless and unsheltered populations.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
Homelessness, fire, and budget. The homelessness, we have watched and seen how people are not getting anything done. We are continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome, and we're not getting that. We need to look at that better. Fire, we need to support the staff that we have. Those are experts in their field. What they lack probably is time, because they're so busy. There's only 7, 8 of them that are paid. So we have time for that. We need to support the financial responsibilities of fire, getting that stuff done, and our budget. We're overextended by so much. We're gonna be insolvent within the next few budget cycles if we don't go in and actually take a deep dive into the budgets and figure out where we messed up. Thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
Roads, which would be traffic, crime and homelessness, and housing. First, roads and traffic. We got a scare in 2021 with the Washington Street fire, and many residents have said they felt trapped. Some of them were on their roofs trying to figure a way out. So I'd have to examine that. I've had a lot of suggestions to me, and again, I'll just have to weigh them. No answer is going to make everyone happy, but roads are definitely what the citizens are saying. Crime, I talked to Sheriff Pooley recently. He said crime is on the rise. Why is it on the rise? I have some suspicions about that, but if you don't have control of your crime, you can't have business. You can't have a vibrant community. So that's serious. And then, of course, housing. One of our residents said that the accessory dwelling units have been overregulated, and I'd like to look into that because it was an answer to the housing shortage. Thank you.
Next question. What would be your recommendation for actions on those issues? Mr. Duez?
Going back through the budget and really looking, we made some port annexation deals in our past 20 years ago, but no one in the current and past city councils, it's really a long time ago, where we squandered away about $450,000 a year, the annexations for Sonora Knolls, where we don't actually get the property tax, and we're responsible for responding police and fire. For the fire, the support, the grant writing programs, we need to get federal, local, state, all on board so we can get that. It is so outside the purview to big flag fires are $40 million. Our little budget can't sustain that. So we have to look at avenues for that. Homelessness, I actually have a 3-pillar system to where I've been talking about doing some teeny houses with the county where they can take some of the property, do some infrastructure where they're already almost at. So there isn't much change because a lot of people don't want it in their backyard. We have to do something. Everyone wants it fixed. No one wants to stand up and try and fight for it. I'm going to. Thank you.
Mr. Merrell?
I think the easiest way to accomplish all of these issues that we've talked about is increased cooperation between our city council and our board of supervisors. As I just mentioned before, they just released the Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan last week. It's an incredible document. I think a lot of the suggestions that they brought up, as I mentioned, weatherizing municipal buildings, investing in things like solar and renewable energies to help with, regardless of your views on climate change, I don't think anyone wants to have to pay for running an air conditioner. And if we set the tone as a government in Tuolumne County on ways that we can reduce those costs and increase efficiency, that's going to open up a whole big mess of dollars for all the other projects that we're talking about here today. And that's going to be in perpetuity. So I think that would be a fantastic way, just more cooperation as a cohesive Tuolumne County is what I would say is the way forward.
Thank you. Next question. What would you propose as a council member to provide shelter and services for our homeless citizens? Ms. Cruz?
Well, I'm an advocate for following the cities who have had successes. So San Diego has had a 20% drop in their homelessness rate, and you have to ask yourself why. They have an accountability program. Studies have shown that our homeless aren't necessarily lacking homes. They have drug addiction and mental health issues. So what they do first is accountability. They have to promise to get services, and then they can move up to the responsibility of home ownership or whatever that form that takes there. I think San Diego's done a great job, and I'd like to follow some of those programs. We've done some good stuff with the Resiliency Village over in Big Hill Road, and then the recent purchase on Stewart Street, renovating that. We have approximately 1,200 homeless people in the community. That would address maybe 200. So it's going to take small steps, but it's going to take this whole village and all the experts in the community to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrell?
I feel like I'm about to prove my own point here, but I actually don't have to make this decision. It was actually made this morning. There's currently a proposal that will be put before the Board of Supervisors on homelessness. They've identified, I want to say, 7 or 8 different sites. 3 of them have been highly recommended by the Commission on Homelessness, headed by Dana Baker, a good friend of mine that I know from Sonora High. There's already plans in motion at this point. So like I said, I think increased cooperation between the city and the county is the way forward here. I think the work that they put in, it shows in how detailed these plans are. Some of the sites are shovel ready, and we can get them finished by the end of the year practically, from what I've seen, or at least within the next 12 months. So yeah, that's how I would deal with it personally, is finding sites like that would serve not only the city of Sonora, but the greater Tuolumne County area.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
So what we need to do is attack it in a 3-pillar system. Homelessness is not the only problem. There is mental health, there is addiction, there is trauma and counseling. So when we talk about how we're going to fund those things and we talk about how we're going to do it, we generally, in the county, spends about $15,000 per patient, per person, alcohol and drug prevention, where we send out a county, where we have facilities here that are capable of doing it for $5,000 over in Changing Echoes, which is the one I talked to. We could save ourselves $10,000 per person. It's a $3 million line item on their budget that they get to tap into that. So we can actually put forth many ideas and get some of the funding done where we don't have to increase any taxes or use that money. We can do the teeny house. Some of the property owners have actually offered to give their property to the county or city to fix some of that. We got to do something in a 3-tier system. We can't just say we're going to attack it and build houses, because that isn't going to work. We're not going to say we can do drugs and alcohol. That's not going to work. We have to come together and do all 3 at once, or even 4. Thank you.
Thank you. What can the city council do to prevent a fire disaster in the city? Ms. Cruz, you will go. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
Well, it's an interesting question because years ago, people had talked about the Greenlee Hill bypass. And there's a guy who said, not in 100 years is that ever going to pass. And I think maybe attitudes have changed because of the Washington Street fire. So what can we do? I know, talking to residents, that some of them are upset that the city is not currently clearing vacant lots of brush, and they're worried about it where they weren't worried about it before. So I hope that answers your question, unless you wanted to rephrase it.
That's up to you to
Okay.
respond.
All right, well, I think I'm happy with that answer, is just to keep on looking at maybe the Greenlee Hill or the lots that haven't been cleared. That's a main concern with the local citizens. That's what they've told me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill?
I would first like to look at, again, most of my thinking for a lot of the spending is going to be grant funded. I'm not sitting here thinking about new taxes. I'm not sitting here, asking people to pay more. I'm trying to find ways to increase efficiency and bring in outside funding so that we don't burden our people any more than we already have. I think a lot of fire prevention has to start on the individual level. We can't just rely on city council to do it, but what we can do as a city council is point our public to educational materials, have a cohesive plan. Like I would be a huge fan of developing an evacuation plan and distribute that to every resident in the city of Sonora so that we could say if a fire breaks out in certain areas of town, we have, a couple of different evacuation routes that you can choose from. And that would give information to our firefighters and police so they can respond and direct traffic accordingly. But again, it comes down to just getting a weed whacker and getting out there and doing some work from time to time.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
So, fire disaster in the city. We do have some plans in effect where we can have the fire chief will go out and look at properties. It's call-based. You could get her to go out and say, hey, this is overgrown. Hey, these things need to be done. How we really need to do is cooperation. We have an FSAC community here where we actually got to sit in this room yesterday and talk about the implementation of how they're going to start holding people accountable for overgrown vegetation and implementation of how they're going to fix these problems. And it's a good building block. It's not there just yet, but we need to really facilitate accountability. We don't do that enough. We've all seen overgrown areas where we go, oh man, if that goes, that's going to take 5 or 6 houses. Well, how do we get that? Who do we call? How do we talk to them? That's where we need to have transparency to be able to reach out to the individuals and say, hey, I have a problem. I want to have this problem solved. What can I do? Accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. How do we ensure that citizens and visitors can evacuate safely in the event of a disaster? Mr. Merrill?
It's been mentioned here just now. I think the Greenlee Road Extension Project is a long overdue public works project that we really do need to get done. In terms of tourists, I've heard a lot of pros and cons on signage because, let's say a fire did break out downtown, smoke can settle very low to the ground and block visibility. But I think there's a lot of ways to, use paint on the streets, clearly marked evacuation routes. That's going to take some additional funding to increase the quality of our roads and some of our sidewalks. But again, it comes down to what I think the Firewise movement really puts an emphasis on is individual neighborhoods and communities coming together to make a plan on their own and to address their needs because I don't know every neighborhood in Sonora, unfortunately. I don't get to walk through them all the time. The people that live there do, and I think they would be the best suited to make some of those plans and maybe have a coalition of Firewise communities come together.
Thank you. Mr. Duez?
We need to have identified evacuation routes. What we also need is we need to prepare for them. We need to practice them. We need to execute them. Today, I had a fire 2 houses down where I went over to help put out that fire. If I couldn't have caught that and I didn't think we were going to, my first priority would have been starting to knock on doors, starting to text my neighbors, starting to talk about that, calling 911. When we get the information out quicker, we can get that stuff done. tourism is definitely here. Some of the businesses say it's 60 to 70% of their business. So we need to have an avenue, and I think that there is some avenues set up where you can use locations on your phone to do mass emergency things and kind of give that. Fire will dictate those routes. So if we have one of those routes cut off, we have to know where we're gonna go. We only really have about 5 exits out of here, and we need to have those better identified, we need to have them better explained, and we need to practice. What you're gonna get out, and go. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz?
Similarly, much has been talked about evacuation signage, but when the question has to do with tourists, are they really paying attention to signage? I know that the Washington Street fire was a great example and a good learning experience for what worked and what didn't work. The reason that the fire did not get out of hand, we were told, was that there was relatively no winds, plus the training and the supplies that our fire department had been given through your tax dollars. So supporting our local fire, maybe signage, training, equipment, these are all ways that we can help get evacuation routes out and tourists out in a panic situation such as a fire with a lot of smoke.
Thank you. How would you support the arts community in Sonora? Mr. Duez?
The arts community has an art council that I don't think we tap into. I think as the city council, it's important to look at what we have, where we have as a community, putting on events. I think Bradford Street, when they do the cook-offs on second Saturday, well, there's an art studio right there. Why are we not facilitating some of that same closure to do that? I believe Leinenberg has a setup in the center that is going to be community usage between the two places that are going to rent out the others, where we can put on art shows and comedy nights or whatever we decide or the community decides. I think putting our money where our mouth is really going to work towards that. We have to do better at reaching out to the programs and the groups that we have here and facilitating to get that done with them. It is too tough to watch people be a penny pincher, which I am, and say, hey, we're not going to have a culture. What are we? Does anyone know what the culture of Sonora is? No. We're all different, but we all have to be on the same page.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz?
I was recently approached by a group of people that are trying to get the dome from the high school. They said it's about a $10 million project, and at first it takes your breath away. But when you listen to these people talk about how they want to turn that into an art resource center, apparently we have a lot of artifacts that are stored all over the county, and they have a vision of bringing it there to the dome. I think it's a great idea, and I know 10 million sounds crazy, but here's the other thing about community and a vibrant community is that when you can all rally around a project, it creates such a sense of family, and it makes you bigger than yourself. And I think Sonora has kind of lacked that for a long time, is rallying around one great, big, wonderful cause. And to have an art center like that where we can all go, support the arts, put our art collections out there, I think would be fantastic.
Thank you. Mr. Merrell?
I wish I could say it's as easy as just calling my friends and booking a bunch of shows up here in Sonora, but I'm sure that's not the answer everyone here is looking for. I'd like to help get out of the way of good ideas. I can remember when I was, just barely an adult, there was the Vision Sonora project, and then it was called 2020, and there was supposed to be a lot of public infrastructure improvements, outdoor dining areas. We just closed Leinenberg Street, 4 years ago, something like that, 5 years ago. I just think it's ridiculous that, we have these ideas that people have voted on. We want this as a community. Why is it taking so long? So if there's any way I can help get people's ideas to come to fruition and just get out of the way of good ideas, that's really what I would want to do as a city council member.
Thank you. This is the last question. How do you propose filling the vacant city clerk position? Mr. Duez?
We definitely don't shop around enough. Our retention for employees here is not applicable with what we have around. Modesto offers way better comprehensive pay. Even Angels Camp offers way better comprehensive pay. What we need to do is we need to get someone in those positions that knows what they're doing. We need to get standing behind them and letting them do what they do. How we actually do our hiring and firing process is a mystery. Now, I've gotten some insight of the processes behind it, but how do we campaign to get those people? Are we just flying an Indeed ad? We need to really vet and have more people. The city administrator job position was flown with 4 applicants. That's it. We need to have a better, diverse way of attracting people to our community. Thank you.
Mr. Merrill?
My default position for most public office would be to have an election, but I don't want to sound ignorant. If no one wants to fill this position, or if we don't have any applicants, I think that says more about us in terms of not making the job worth doing to anyone, and that's definitely worth investigating. Looking inward as opposed to outward.
Thank you.
And Ms. Cruz.
Ms. Cruz? Yes. I got caught up with my marks here. Sorry. Ms. Cruz?
I agree with my constituents. I would say better pay. You know, I had a conversation with Laura Krieg, and she said they had a hard time filling a DA's position, that there's a shortage there too because of the pay. I'm familiar with LinkedIn, Ladders, those other hiring websites that attract people of higher caliber, higher pay. But we do need to take that dragnet and spread it out a little further, because what compensates us for our lack of pay is the quality of life here.
Closing statements, you are allowed 2 minutes each. We will start with Mr. Duez.
I think that we need to be more proactive. I think that we have fallen behind. We have kicked the can down the road. We have done deferred maintenance. There is a lot of problems that we have. Where do we start and tackle them? Well, that's a great topic. When we get in, I want to hear from each and every one of you. I am so tired of not seeing the transparency of being able to call my city council member, except Colette, she picks up the phone all the time, and Mark. And but how many people reach out and really try to have a conversation to understand how we're voting on things, why we're doing things, and get a response? It's kind of frustrating. I want to do a little bit more of a town hall style meeting, taking people out, doing what I need to do so that I can hear what problems exist. Obviously, we know what we have, but what we don't know, we don't know. And things don't change unless they change. So we need to have a better idea of what we're doing for the city, whether that's homeless, whether that's the budget systems, whether that's fire, whether that's putting and working with the Board of Supervisors, which has been strained for a long, long time. That this is the most open where I think I could call one of them and actually they'd pick up a phone and have a conversation with me. And I'm nobody at this point. That's a great thing. When I become somebody, I want to put a 2 council member, 2 board supervisor committee together and call it the problem solving group, where we can do every single week, sit down and go over what problems we're hearing from our constituents. And we can say, this is how we want to try to attack it. Then we can start the process of having to go through the rigmaroles of legal and everything else before we can come up with a solution. But being open and ready to talk to the constituents is one of our biggest. I'm also going to stand on those decisions for you. I'm going to take those arrows. Not you, so you don't have to fear anything that's going to come out of it, and you can say, I really don't like this, and I'm going to voice that for you. I'm going to stand in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill?
I just wanted to reiterate the main criteria that I will approach every issue as a city council member. Is it good for the community and our citizens? Is it good for the economy? And is it good for the environment? I know a lot of people are asking, how do you pay for this? And I've been consulting with some of our local citizens who are very well qualified, have worked for PG&E and other utilities companies for 30, 40 plus years. And again, I look to the Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan that was released last week. There are so many dollars lined up for climate mitigation efforts related to wildfire. You know, this is not just about climate change. This is about having a healthy home environment for not just myself, but our elderly and homeless communities. I don't think I need to tell anyone the detriments to your health from breathing in wildfire smoke on the regular. It's a great way to reduce our lifespan, and I'm going to do everything I can to help mitigate those costs to our citizens and to our government. I think there's a huge amount of scope for collaboration with our county level board of supervisors. I highly recommend everyone here goes and familiarizes yourself with the plan. A lot of work went into it, and it's got some great common sense stuff. Ways we could mitigate costs would be through programs like the Civil Spark program, which would incentivize paid internships for college students, straight out of places like UC Merced, Columbia College, that they could come in and help identify some of these areas that we can improve efficiency from a fire and climate mitigation standpoint. And I think, if we could turn Sonora into a destination that say, hey, come and cut your teeth in Tuolumne County, because we are, one of the most beautiful natural environments in all of California, I would say. Again, I just want what's good for the community, I want what's good for our economy, and I want what's good for our environment at the end of the day. It's that simple.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz.
I began with the word vibrant, and I'm going to end with the word vibrant. Our families are the cornerstone of a vibrant community. Are we going to set them up for failure? Or are we going to set them up for success? Many people don't realize that the city council position only pays $100 a month. And at today's rate, it's not even enough to fill your gas tank. I believe so strongly in our families and the future of our next generation and setting them up for success that I am going to be donating my $100 stipend every month to the Foothill Pregnancy Center, because they do an incredible amount of work for our families. So that's the way I am looking at taking office. I actually want to help those around me to succeed. And if it means giving you that stipend, or if it means taking time out of my day, whatever it is, this is truly civil service at its most basic. And everyone who's applying needs to be applauded. And anyone who's gone before us needs to be applauded. It really is a sacrifice. So in closing, I would just like to say that I would like to remind you that this is a constitutional republic which relies on self-governance, and that for each of us to be involved in our local community is the other component of us running for office and doing the things that we need to do, is that we need you to do what you as citizens should do. So thank you very much, and that concludes my statement.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating in this evening's forum. Also, I'd like to thank the timekeepers for keeping us on track. And thank you to the audience for being a good audience. And now back to Ms. Latch.
Well, thank you for attending the League of Women Voters of the Mother's Load Forum for Sonora City Council. And we hope you found this evening informative. And remember that your vote is your voice. And if you haven't registered to vote yet, we do have a table right outside those doors with some lovely individuals who will help you with that task. So as you exit these chamber doors here, if you would like to meet with the candidates and ask them some more questions, please feel free to do so and meet them outside the building's doors, please. Good evening.
Good evening.
Be safe.